everybody. This is the Science Bridge webinar series. And my guest today is Julien Nunes Goncalves. Julien graduated from University of Pretoria with master's degree in Human Physiology. He further worked as a tutor and lecturer at the university, but he became later the marketing specialist in healthcare and life science industries. So welcome, Julien.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Now, I think it's quite an interesting transition to transition from a lecturer and tutor to suddenly marketing specialist. So I think it's going to be a very interesting interview to hear what is your story, what pushed you towards that direction, and what were your setbacks possibly, and the actual milestones of your career. So I think it's a great interview that we are having ahead.
Absolutely, no, definitely. I'm happy to share my story.
So let's start with your story. So tell us maybe more general background. You studied physiology, and what pushed you towards that, firstly?
So, I think even taking a step back before that. So for me, since high school, it was my sights were kind of set on becoming a doctor. Always fascinated with human biology and how everything worked, and that was kind of my objectives. The problem that many of us have realized as we go to studies, there's such a shortage of the jobs that they actually speak about when it comes to school levels, either doctor, lawyer, teacher, engineer. There's these set scenarios, but as soon as you go to study, you just realize there's a whole world out there, and that's kind of exactly what happened to me. So I didn't get into medicine first time around. So I did a BSc degree and just really fell in love with the research side of things. Eventually carried on until I did my master's, and during this time I did a bit of lecturing and tutoring on the side. And so at that stage, then I was kind of hooked on the research and the lecturing side. Really enjoyed it, and also applied in that. But life as happens in life, sometimes you don't always get everything that you've lined up for yourself. And the one thing that I would probably say is just advice for others is just be adaptable, and that's exactly what I did. And so immediately after my master's, I finished my degree, and then I got a job at a research company medical research company in Cape Town called Synexa Life Sciences, and that's where I'm still working at now. Started out as a research associate, lab scientist, busy working in the lab, doing the work there. And then how I got into the marketing, which, as you said in the beginning, is a very interesting career change and twist. And for me as well, I never thought I'd ever go into the business or sales side, and to an extent, I'm not really in that too much. It's more the marketing, which is slightly different, but there are some characteristics that are the same. But how I got into it is I started working more with our managers, just doing more with some of the reaching out to vendors, service providers, even starting to chat to potential clients and things. And the way that we were going about doing it, which is unfortunately a trend across many companies at that level, is we rely a lot on word of mouth marketing, and I just started seeing there's a gap here, and then that's kind of how I got into the marketing. The biggest thing with these kind of companies is when you go and you try and market the company and you try and sell the product or service that you provide. It's a very tricky field because you can go to all of these marketing agencies that exist out there, but they do not speak the scientific language. And this is now where it's a very niche environment. We need scientists who understand marketing. We need marketers who understand science. Because when you market and you put the company forward, you need to actually be able to understand the science. So that's kind of how my journey has landed me here. And I really enjoy it. My day-to-day job is just really marketing the company, putting it forward, whether it be designing website content or brochures or data sheets or anything that relates to the product or the service that the company offers. It revolves around that. So that's kind of where I'm at now, and that's been my journey up until now.
Okay, so you're saying that marketing is not the same as selling, as being a salesperson. So how that differs then?
Well, like I said, there are characteristics that are the same. The objective, obviously, of marketing is to get more projects, in our case, if it's a service, or to sell more products. So the way that I think of it being different to sales is a lot more direct. You go to the client or you connect with the client and you say, here's my product, here's my service, this is how we do it. Whereas marketing is a lot more passive rather than active. So it's more about creating awareness about what you do or what you sell. So it facilitates sales, but it doesn't cause sales itself. That's kind of how I think of it. Granted, I'm fairly new and inexperienced in the marketing game. It's all been self-taught, but it's just really, that's my view, at least in my experience at my company. We have a sales team, and my job is to facilitate their work by creating awareness of who we are. So that includes, like I said earlier, website presence, very, very important. Social media as well, just making sure that the name of the company is out there and people are aware of what you do. Where sales is more direct in terms of finding clients, connecting with them, and selling the product. Okay,
so then how does it relate to your background in human physiology? How you can apply that background, the skills that you learned in your education, in your daily job?
Well, this is now what makes me excited and why I really enjoy what I do. So when it comes to actually marketing, as I said earlier, you can approach these companies who specialize in marketing, but they are not experienced when it comes to the science. When you're dealing with a scientific company, whether it be pharmaceutical or health tech or biotech, it's a very niche field, and there's a lot of jargon, a lot of technical terms that need to be dealt with, and your layman's will not understand those terms. However, if you're selling to people, you need to, or marketing to the broader audience and trying to get more clients on board, they need to know that you know what you're talking about. So it's very important that the content that you put out there, that you put on, for example, we use LinkedIn a lot. So we make sure that the content we put on LinkedIn, on our website, on our brochures that are shared with our clients, has to be of a high scientific quality. And that's where my training as a scientist has come forward, because I can rely on that. I know what the scientists are talking about. If they come forward to me and say, okay, we've developed and validated this new assay, I know what they're talking about. And I can then go back and slightly, dilute it a little bit, make it a little bit more digestible, because there is a lot of technical data in there. So I would work with it a little bit, but at least the central contents is still scientifically accurate. And that's very important, especially when you're dealing with, CEOs and chief scientific officers and all the senior management of your potential company that you want to sell your product to. They need to know that you know what you're talking about. So it's very important for us to actually have that distinction between marketing, bringing in the scientific background as well.
No, that sounds interesting. So can you tell us if in South Africa itself, there are marketing companies for scientific products and for scientific companies?
Not to my knowledge. This, as I said, it's a position that I am trying to position myself in, is that niche environment where you meet it's a kind of middle ground between marketing and science. At the moment, there aren't any South African companies. The reality is South Africa is still developing as a biotech hub. We've got a lot of potential. There's some fantastic companies and startups that have recently, started up, but it takes a bit of time. And as the healthcare and biotech industry grows, there's going to become more and more need for that. So I'm sure that in the near future, there will be companies like that. Who knows, maybe one day I'll have done my own startup, and that will be exactly what we do. That is a medium-term objective I've set for myself. But in the interim, I think it's up to individuals who actually present themselves as experts in this field, who take on either the scientific, either marketers who learn the science or scientists who learn the marketing. And it's a field which I think a lot of companies are starting to realize and accept that this is needed for them. A lot of companies in South Africa, we rely a lot on, I like to call it the word of mouth model, and also a lot of back scratching as well. What can you do for me, and I'll do something for you. That's just the way that businesses work for years and years. But as South Africa is growing and as the industry is growing, we now need to deal more with international clients, and we need to think at an international level. And marketing is a very, very big and promising aspect to that.
So it sounds like there is quite a big future for people who are more outspoken, if I understand correctly. What kind of characteristics are needed to become a marketer like yourself? What do you think are the best characteristics that people should identify themselves with before joining your fields?
Well, I think with any career, there's never, a set of golden characteristics that every person in that job will have, but there are definitely some that I would say are useful. And again, I can only really rely on my own experience with this. But for example, for me, lecturing was very, very useful, because the ability to take a concept and teach it or share it, or just to actually dilute that message and bring it across in a way that everyone understands, that has been incredibly useful. Other characteristics is, I guess, just a bit of technical understanding, knowing how the internet works, for example. Marketing relies very much on how, search engines work, how social media works, and how it prioritizes certain posts. So a bit of technical understanding helps as well, though it's not a massive priority. The reality is, Martina, I think a lot of skills can be learned. And I think a lot of people sometimes are scared. And this again comes from my own experience. When you finish up with a degree, especially a science degree, you kind of box yourself in and you think, okay, I'm going to become a scientist. The reality is that, first of all, there aren't that many scientific jobs. As the Science Bridge, that's the objective, is just to share more career objectives and career options out there. But if you don't get a job as a scientist, it's not the end of the world. There's so many options, and it's not that big of a jump to go from one career to another, if that makes sense. For me, the jump from science to marketing was literally a day. It took a while, obviously, to learn those skills, but in terms of being at the company, one day I was a scientist, the next day I was a marketer. So it's kind of it just takes a bit of a step, and just a bit of effort and a bit of perseverance just to learn the necessary skills. The wonderful thing about the world that we're living in now as well is there's so much available online that you can learn. You don't need a separate degree in marketing and go back to varsity for 3 years. You can learn that as you're busy working, and that goes for many different skills. A lot of scientists sometimes go into the sales position. Doesn't mean that you need to now go back and do a BCom. You learn these skills as you go along. The one big thing that I really try and push and advise young scientists as well, having been in that position, is just take that first step. A lot of the soft skills and things that companies are looking for, you're only going to learn when you get your first job. So it's very important just to actually start working, even if it's just for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Get that experience, get a name for yourself, get work experience into your CV, and then you can, as they say, the sky's the limit, because you can literally go into any field that you want, whether it be entrepreneurship, whether it be marketing, whether it be sales, whether it be anything. It's out there. You can take it.
So basically getting out of the comfort zone in a way, and out of that box of scientists that, as you said, like we are getting boxed ourselves with this idea of scientists, but not necessarily we have to do that. We can do something else and combine our additional passions, I guess. You seem like quite a passionate person when it comes to marketing. So that's, I guess, it was your side passion aside from human physiology.
Well, this is the thing, is I never knew I would be passionate about it. For me, I literally had no thoughts about sales or business or marketing whatsoever. In my mind, I was a scientist and this is what I'm going to do. And it's only with actually working that I realized, hey, there's a whole other side of this that I can really do well in and thoroughly enjoy. For me, the run-of-the-mill science, it became a little boring. It's very repetitive, if that makes sense. And some people will enjoy that, consistency. Whereas for me, I enjoyed the academic side of science, where everything was new, everything was different every time. But it's also very stressful. You're always looking for grants and this, and it's quite a difficult process. So, I took the jump to go into industry, but the science side for me personally, the science side of industry was a little bit mundane, a little bit boring. So as soon as this opportunity, opened up, and I saw that there's another side to it that's very enjoyable, and I thoroughly enjoy it, that's kind of how I became aware that marketing is a passion for me. But like I said earlier, you can't know what you're going to enjoy unless you actually take that jump. And just, I guess, dip your toe a little bit into different aspects. Another piece of advice that I would give young scientists starting out in industry or any company is don't be afraid to kind of dip your toe a little bit into different departments and find out a bit more from different groups. You might find a passion there that you never knew you had. So that's, I guess, just to go across different departments or different research groups or anything. It's always a good positive thing as well.
So you sound quite like it was just a journey that was very successful, and I really want to congratulate you on that. But what were your sticking points in your career search? Like some problems and obstacles that you faced during your journey?
So yeah, it sounds like it was very easy and successful, but you're absolutely right. I mean, every journey is going to have these pitfalls and frustrations. I think for me, it was very frustrating. So as I said, it started already where I wanted to do medicine, and that never worked out just for whatever reason. And maybe if I can just put in here as well, looking back at your life, it's always amazing to see how everything lines up, and it just takes a bit of perseverance, a bit of just persevere through the dark areas, if I can put it that way, and everything will line up. But at the time, it is frustrating. Choosing what to study is always stressful. And then when you finish studying, then it's now the job search. And that's always a very, very difficult thing. For me, it took quite a few tries and a lot of searching. In all honesty, I think I got lucky in that there was a position available. And it does take a lot of when it comes to CVs, for example, it takes a lot of tries and trial and error to make sure that it's something that people will like and that they'll find useful. So CV is very important to make sure that that's up to standard. In our field as well, having a LinkedIn profile doesn't hurt, and making sure that stays up to date, things like that. But even then, with all of that in place, it is quite difficult. So when it came to job searching and that, for me, the difficult thing was just finding the right words to say when you make the application. But when you get it right, then it does make a difference. And I think a lot of people also underestimate how many times it takes to get a successful job, how many applications it takes. Just doing 2 or 3 applications is not enough. It takes sometimes 15, 20. I've heard of people applying to hundreds of jobs, and you eventually, get the dream job that you're looking for. So just persevere, and it just takes a lot of, for lack of a better term, just perseverance, just push through, and eventually you will succeed,
Yes, I mean, resilience, and also network and find different opportunities. And see where you might fit your personality in, because everybody has different personality, and I guess not everybody will be good for marketing as much as not everybody will be good for lab scientists. Sure.
Absolutely. There's 2 things that you mentioned there that I think it's worth bringing up, discussing more. The first thing is networking. The reality is the world that we live in is changing a lot. And it's, we need to make sure that you position yourself in an environment that is conducive to success. Connect with people who are movers, who are well connected, who are passionate about the work they do, and that you can learn from them. And I think a platform like LinkedIn, I know it's very old-fashioned, but Facebook, platforms like this, you learn a lot from people. And if you're following the right people, even if it's the likes of Bill Gates, Richard Branson, these big names that often come up, just follow them and see the kind of success that they've been through and learn from them. And then even at a much more local level, your lecturers, people your mentors, people that you look up to, connect with them. Don't be scared to speak to them as well. I think this is one of the characteristics that I would, going back to your previous question, just on characteristics, don't be scared to speak up. Don't be scared to connect. When you do connect, please use good grammar and good full punctuation. There's nothing worse than, hi, I am so and so, and just use punctuation. Unfortunately, this is just a trend that I see amongst some of my old students and that, and it just comes across really well when you connect with someone. Just be polite, be well spoken. Not all of us, English is a first language or Afrikaans or whatever, but just put in a bit of effort is what I'm saying. That's just the smaller side.
I'm really happy that you mentioned your sticking points, because I think that, as you're saying, the perseverance and resilience of scientists is quite underestimated, and it can help greatly to a lot of students with um, basically their job search, because it's not going to be
Absolutely, yeah.
easy, but it's going to be worth it. If you're going to
Yeah,
actually look for the right job and the perfect fit for you, and don't follow just, your boxed career, then you're going to
yeah, yeah.
find something that it's worth fighting for, going every day to work for.
Absolutely, yes, definitely. And you know what, when you do hit that point, it's so enjoyable. It feels like I've reached the place where I fit. I mean, it's especially for scientists. I think it's quite difficult to a lot of our peers who maybe study BCom or education or engineering. After 4 or 5 years of study, they get their job. 3 or 4 years later, they're well established in the industry. For us, we've only just finished studying there. So it takes a long time, and it's sometimes frustrating. You see people having relationships, getting married, having kids, even at a much younger age for other degrees than you do for scientists. But it's still worth it. It's a fantastic field, and I think as I said earlier, South Africa is really, really. It's going to be way up there in terms of the international standard when it comes to the science and healthcare field. We've got some really, really good companies that have started up. If I look at the companies that are available that have jobs now versus when I was a student, there's way more now than we had, 6, 7 years ago. So it's a move in the right direction. And I think South Africa is going to do very, very well.
Yes, I think the South African field, especially now with pandemics, it's proven itself. It's proven that it can
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
self-sustaining and quite adaptable and resilient when it comes to the tough conditions that COVID has provided for us.
Yeah, very true.
So may I ask you for your final advice for our listeners?
I mean, I've spoken a lot today, so I mean, I apologize to the listeners for waffling, as they say. But I think it's just really perseverance and resilience is the one thing that you cannot have too little of. Just stay the course, keep pushing, and I think it's always good to follow your dreams, but just understand that dreams can change as well. For me, the dream was to be a doctor, to then the dream changed to be a scientist. And it's great to have a dream, but don't become so fixed on the dream that you lose sight of an even better dream along the side, if that makes sense. It's important for us as human beings to be adaptable. And it just takes, one step at a time. Just keep pushing. 3, 4 years later, you're going to look back and realize that, all of the stresses were worth it, because it really, at the end of everything, it really is worth it.
No, absolutely. I also agree that at the end of the day, everything will be worth it, and the stress of today will actually bring the smile the next day. So thank you so much, Julien, for your time, your wisdom, your experience that you decided to share with us. I think it was a lot of information that people can now easily digest and think about their future career, because not necessarily with the title of scientist you have to become a physically in the lab scientist. You can be scientist and do something slightly different, still use your knowledge.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much for having me. It's been great chatting. And to all the future scientists and current scientists, and just all the best of luck. I think it's a great career you guys have chosen, and keep at it. We need more scientists out there, definitely.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Julian.